Hello and welcome to News Round, a recap of stories in the week. I'm Teniola Shoboale, the headlines. Nigeria and Africa bid farewell to poliomyelitis as World Health Organization declares continent free of disease. Nigeria's former Minister of Agriculture, Akinwumi Adesina, re-elected as president of the African Development Bank for another 5-year term. United Nations asks for societal-based approach to make perpetrators of gender-based violence face the wrath of the law. Plus, Economic Community of West African States asked military leaders in Mali to set an acceptable timetable for a return to democratic government within 12 months. News Round takes off on a cherry note as poliomyelitis, an infectious disease caused by the polio virus, is finally kicked out of Nigeria and Africa, with the World Health Organization declaring the continent free of the disease. This comes 40 years after the continent got rid of smallpox, another infectious disease that ravaged the world, especially Africa, in the 80s. President Muhammadu Buhari joined the certification ceremony virtually from Abuja, stating that the African countries can defeat the COVID-19 pandemic the same way polio has been eradicated.
Nigeria is the last country in Africa to be declared free of poliomyelitis after accounting for more than half of the cases around the world less than 10 years ago. Around the world, only 2 countries still have the virus, Pakistan and Afghanistan. 2016 was the last time Nigeria recorded any new case of the wild polio virus, and it was discovered in Borno State. Being the epicenter of the Boko Haram insurgency, it was difficult for health workers to take the much-needed vaccines there. And this is in addition to a lot of misinformation about the polio vaccine in many parts of northern Nigeria.
If you can assure everybody in the world that up in Borno, in those areas where we cannot get into, if you can find a way to assure us that there is no polio there, the African region will be satisfied after 3 years.
In 2013, 9 female polio vaccinators were killed after a radio broadcast claimed the vaccine was a population control tool. This happened in Kano State.
Most of our workers come in touch with harassment of having parents because they don't know the importance of this polio. So we used to convince them, we used to give them advice and the good side of this implementation.
The back and forth over Nigeria's polio status was our collective embarrassment, particularly in 2016, after going 2 years without any new infections. So it was time to ensure a collective effort. That collective effort has paid off with this certification. President Muhammadu Buhari, while delivering his address at the event commemorating the certification, says this is a promise kept by his administration.
At a time when the global community is battling with COVID-19 pandemic, this achievement strengthens my conviction that with the requisite political will, investments and strategies, as well as citizens' commitment, we will flatten the endemic curve. I can affirm the commitment of all African leaders in this course of action.
Now, all that must happen is to ensure this status remains. The financial implications and loss of lives caused by the wild polio virus must come to an end. From the State House in Abuja, Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
And the eradication of polio is not the only good news President Buhari received this week. One other is the re-election of Mr. Akinwumi Adesina, Nigeria's former Minister of Agriculture, as the president of the African Development Bank for another 5-year term. And the president did not hesitate to congratulate Mr. Adesina over this feat. In his message, the president's comment reads in part, Mr. Adesina's versatility, experience at both national and international engagements will be further further deployed to energize the Pan-African financial institution, urging him to remain focused and steadfast in pursuing the noble goals of making life better for Africans through various development plans already captured as high fives. Mr. Additional, who was elected by the bank's Board of Governors, announced that his re-election spells a new dawn for the bank's service delivery to the continent.
Mr. Akinwumi Adesina's announcement as the president of the African Development Bank to run another 5-year term came with huge excitement, owing to several reforms for the continent's economies through the bank. Mr. Adesina, Nigeria's former Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, focused on 5 development priorities known as the High Fives, which had Light Up and Power Africa, Feed Africa, Industrialize Africa, Integrate Africa, and improve the quality of life for the people of Africa. Shortly after his re-election during the bank's 55th annual meeting, Mr. Adesina highlights the resolution with the Board of Governors on how to get Africa out of the devastation caused by the COVID-19 pandemic.
We discussed ways in which the bank will support Africa to rebuild better and stronger from the effects of COVID-19 pandemic. We discussed how to further strengthen our institution, deepen our governance and accountability systems. We discussed many more: regional trade, regional integration, climate, gender, youth and jobs, and of course, debt sustainability, and how to focus on quality health infrastructure to build economic resilience for Africa.
Last year, the bank's shareholders increased its authorized capital base for a historic $115 billion, the largest in the bank's 55-year history. Mr. Adesina is calling for more support.
Myself and the board of directors, senior management and staff of the bank will need each and every one of you, our shareholders, collectively in support for the bank to play this leadership role.
He goes on to thank the bank's Board of Governors for their support in steadying the bank during the leadership crisis, owing to their belief in his vision.
I look forward to working closely with each and every one of you for the urgent and difficult task of supporting Africa to build back better, smarter, and boldly from the COVID-19 pandemic.
As Mr. Adesina tasks the bank staff for more selfless service to Africa and the bank, the expectations of the continent and the rest of the world will be that the bank will continue to be the backbone of Africa's development through its various interventions.
Now to justice delivery, especially the lengthy periods that accompanies court cases, which is a subject of concern. This time, President Buhari is making a case for the introduction of time limits for all court cases through his vice, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, who made the call at the 60th Annual General Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association in Lagos.
The 2020 Annual General Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association is holding virtually with over 20,000 participants. There's, however, a small physical element of the event in compliance with the social distancing guidelines of the government. The president of the bar and the chairman of the Technical Conference Planning Committee kicked off the opening ceremony of the 60th Bar Conference with the theme, Step Forward.
60 years in which we've helped to build this nation, 60 years in which we've fought oppression to a standstill, 60 years in which we've made democracy stand. And what you would hear is the steps we need to take forward to make sure that in 60 years, we're not just one of the third largest countries in the world, but indeed we are one of the largest economies in the world.
Having an association is perhaps easy, but keeping it alive and united for 60 years, that could be challenging, and that is something that we should celebrate. And so, this conference is calling on all of us to step forward and face the future.
The federal government used the opportunity of the conference to make a case on the need for lawyers to push for judicial reforms.
Reform is urgent because the fabric of our society is stitched together by our system of justice and law enforcement. We cannot afford to have the stitches come undone. The first issue I'd like to commend to your consideration is the terribly slow pace of trials in our courts. Why can't we have time limits for all cases? Why can't we put in place the rules that will say that a criminal trial all the way to the Supreme Court must not exceed 12 months in duration?
Apart from the issues of speed and justice, reforms were also suggested to tackle issues of multiple and conflicting court orders, the seeming bias for technical justice, and the need to improve on the mode of appointment of judges so as to get the best talents to man the bench.
The bar must eschew the filing of frivolous processes.
The Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Ibrahim Mohammed, wants lawyers to stop filing frivolous processes as these tends to clog up the court's dockets and delay the timely administration of justice. The opening ceremony also witnessed remarks from the Rivers and the Lagos state governments. The NBA conference continues on Thursday. Shola Shoyeli, Channels Television News.
So on the issues of justice, but that pertaining to gender-based violence, at a 3-hour town hall meeting, the United Nations Resident Coordinator, Mr. Edward Cullen, and other speakers asked for a societal-based approach that will make perpetrators of gender-based violence face the wrath of law.
Of culture, an attendance that represents the gravity of gender-based violence and its overbearing weight on society. Girls, women and children mostly have bared the brunt.
And I'm going to come to you now, Ambassador.
The United Nations and the European Union, front row advocates against rape, traced the root cause and wasted no time to proffer solutions.
That comes back to the issues of poverty, the issues of being able to provide for yourself, the issues of being able to meet your responsibility as members of the family. At times we push this under the carpet.
But the issues are as deep as they are heartbreaking. The story of Fatima Ishaku tends to draw one to a breaking point.
So sorry, when you say you told your mom and she asked you to keep quiet, is that how it ended?
No,
what happened after?
They took me to the village for traditional cleansing.
Oh, you went for cleansing? Did Dad go for cleansing?
No, he didn't go.
Oh, he didn't go for cleansing?
No.
Just you?
Yes, because the family did not want her to marry the man. And he's supposed to dance around the market. So I was the one that went. So after the cleansing, they brought something for him to eat. So he hated me. He started dealing with me. My mom had to move me out from the house. Took me to my uncle's place. 2 years later, my mother died. We have to come back to the house. Then that was when the rape started.
Non-government organizations are also mindful of the atrocities meted out on many, most of them vulnerable and poor.
It's made worse when they do not receive support from the society, when people turn to favor the perpetrators instead of the survivors. So you get to see community members coming to beg survivors to drop the case.
The challenges for the survivors and victims alike are now getting to a boiling point. 3,600 cases reported in the country. 799 are suspected cases, while 631 are investigated and charged to court. Legislation here may be the answer.
Enforcement of the law is critical, and that's why the example the Honourable Minister gave you of what we did in Ekiti when we started the Sexual Offenders Register in 2013 has now morphed into what we call a naming and shaming policy.
All of the laws that we have made that are derivable from this chapter 4, this section 34 of the Constitution, all prescribe penal consequences, strict penal consequences that are consistent with global benchmarks.
The Solicitor General of the Federation, in his submission on the matter, believes the strategy must be reset.
We are also considering in the committee a comprehensive investigation and preservation of evidence to support successful prosecutions of all cases of gender-based violence.
Issues of violence seems to have caught the attention of Nigerians working in world organizations, with many agreeing that there must be zero tolerance to gender-based violence, and the domestication of the Child Rights Act in different states must be implemented to the letter. Gimba Umar, Channels Television News.
International flights to now resume on September the 5th. That and other stories when News Round returns in a moment. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information for you on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from the respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV and Roku. Also remember that when you get the Channels TV or Channels 24 apps, you can catch up with news updates on the go, plus the Eyewitness feature, which was designed for you to share pictures, videos, or news of happenings around you. Just install the apps, then tap and swipe to reveal the menu, and then follow the instructions. Now to education. This week, the Governing Council of the University of Lagos confirmed the election of Professor Folashade Ogunshola as the acting Vice-Chancellor of the institution. This was done at an emergency Governing Council virtual meeting presided over by the newly appointed acting Chairman of the Council, Dr. John Momo. A day earlier, the university's Senate members elected Professor Folashade Ogunshola as the acting Vice-Chancellor of the school, who until her election was the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Development Services. The Senate Emergency Committee Chairman after the election says due process was followed in electing the new acting VC as directed by the federal government. From education to aviation, as international flight operations will now resume on September the 5th against the earlier date of August the 29th owing to logistic challenges. Meanwhile, the task force has also launched an online portal to keep track of all its finances and spending.
International travelers coming or going out of Nigeria will have to wait until September 5th, as the government says it is no longer feasible to open the airspace for international flights at the end of this month.
Since the announcement by the Honourable Minister of Aviation a few weeks ago that international flights will resume any time from the 29th of August, the aviation sector has worked assiduously to be ready for this date. However, we have other non-aviation logistics we are still working at, mostly to do with the COVID protocols. So for this reason, unfortunately, I have to let you know the resumption date has been shifted by 1 week to 5th of September.
Having eradicated the wild polio virus, the Minister of Health says most of the resources used will now be redeployed for the COVID-19 response.
We shall be deploying the material and human resource assets from the polio eradication effort to surveillance and fighting other disease outbreaks, including the fight against COVID-19 pandemic.
The task force has also launched an online portal, which it says will enable the public to track its finances and expenditure.
The PTF has been tracking donations and technical assistance received from individuals, groups, and various national and international organizations. These donations, alongside the disbursements across the Federation, have been documented and are now open for everyone to see through the activation of these dashboards, which are now accessible on the PTF website.
It is exactly 6 months since February 27th this year, when the first COVID-19 case in Nigeria was diagnosed. While Nigeria has received several commendations from the international community about her case management strategy, the massive disregard for the non-pharmaceutical interventions, such as the use of face masks, remain a major impediment to various efforts at breaking the chain of transmission.
While the country awaits the resumption of international flights, a helicopter accident may have shattered the country's air safety record when it crashed into a building in the Okwebi area of Lagos, killing all 3 persons on board. 2 of the occupants were immediately confirmed dead at the site of the crash, while the 3rd person died in hospital.
This wreckage of a Bell helicopter 206B3 with registration marks 5NBQW, operated by Quorum Aviation, explains the sound that jolted the resident and business owners on Salvation Street in the Okwebi area of Lagos about midday on Friday.
It was prompt. We have a time limit on aviation response. So immediately we received it, the closest agency here, fire service, were mobilized, and all the stakeholders around there, the fire service, police, road safety controlling traffic, have to move in. That was what we did in responding to it.
The impact also affected this saloon car with its rear screen damaged. Residents of Salvation Street give account of what happened. Some of them even attempted to rescue the occupants of the craft. This incident would definitely shape discussions here, and so without regard to the social distancing protocol, crowds poured into the area to get a glimpse of the wreckage. The owner of the building, an elderly woman, narrates her experience.
Big, large sound that I never heard in my life. It happened that the thunder and the smoke and everything, under this one, there was no, the light was on. The light was on, and it's still on now. But all I have to do is to thank God.
Time to remove the wreckage, and to make it easier and ensure there is no outbreak of fire, the emergency officials dampened the premises with chemicals. The last time an helicopter crashed in Lagos was in 2016, and all 11 passengers survived. Meanwhile, the Accident Investigation Bureau says it's begun investigations into the fatal accident. Nelta Egbe, Channels Television News.
The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has asked the military leaders in Mali to set an acceptable timetable for a return to democratic government within 12 months. President Muhammadu Buhari made the comments during the ECOWAS Heads of State and Government virtual meeting. He added that the findings by the Special Envoy, former President Goodluck Jonathan, made it clear that the regional body's dialogue with the new military leadership in Mali were yet to achieve the desired results in several areas. And that's News Round this week. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shoboale. Have a lovely weekend.